When he saw the vast crowd, his heart was moved with pity for them, for they were like sheep without a shepherd, and he began to teach them many things. We have this image today of Jesus in his movement of pity being a great teacher of the people. Now there's this idea that exists in our society and culture, that some people have, that when it comes to learning, when it comes to achieving knowledge of things, all things can come to be known by the application of science. That we have this application of reason in a way that we call our scientific method as a means of coming to knowledge of things of the world. But in some aspects, or among some people of our society or culture, it's moved to the sense that all knowledge of all things can be achieved through science. But the thing is, science was never meant to teach us all knowledge of all things. Science is a method and tool to which to discover and understand the physical, mechanical workings of the physical world. And while it's a good discipline to teach us many of those things, to teach us the what of the world, it can never tell you what to do about it, or the why. It can never tell you what is good and evil. You may achieve knowledge of how this aspect of the world works, but what do you do about it? So we quickly begin to realize that there's this whole realm of knowledge that science can't answer for us. Because science was never meant to answer those kinds of questions. When we try to answer those questions with science, things about what is good and evil, the existence of God, etc., well, science isn't the right tool. It's like trying to measure how much water you have with a kitchen thermometer. It's the wrong tool for the wrong thing. So obviously there's another way that we must come to knowledge. Well, we can have some basic principles of what we innately understand to be right and wrong, and apply our reason to that. And this gets us in the realm of philosophy. But even in the application of reason and trying to understand what is right and wrong, what it means to truly be human, you can only get so far. That we bump up in the limits of our human knowledge. And so to go a step further, the next step of understanding is what we call God's revelation. That God himself reveals himself. God, who is the foundation of all things, who is goodness, truth, and beauty itself, the underlying principles of all the universe, behind it all, reveals himself to us. And thus gives us the foundational principles and truth to build upon. And this is the unfolding of the biblical story. If you go throughout the Bible, it's this unfolding story of God gradually revealing himself to all of humanity. And that blossoms, that manifests, that culminates in the person of Jesus Christ. God revealing himself to the world of who he is, and bringing us to an understanding that we can't achieve on our own. And especially that some of what God reveals about himself at first glance seems contradictory to our human reason. That especially the height, the culmination of God's revelation of who he is, this all-powerful creator God of the universe, the culminating of that revelation is a man on a cross crucified. And there's a lot to unpack in that. So the church talks about that in Jesus is the fullness of public revelation. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing for us to discover. Quite the contrary. That this Christianity, the Christian spiritual life, is this invitation to an adventure of discovery. See, sometimes in our secular world, there's a sense that through science we've basically found out all there is to know. But this scientism that leads to secularism, that we've discovered all there is to know because all there is the material stuff and we can only know it through science. Like, this is it. It leaves us as like sheep without a shepherd. That we think when all there is to this world is all this physical stuff and we basically acknowledged it, here it is, we're sort of left with this existential boredom, a sense of meaninglessness that leads us on to despair. But see, the revelation of God, the person of Jesus Christ, brings us up to the edge of what we can come to understand of our own. But rather than us thinking that this is it, it's only to realize that there is so much more for us to know and discover. It's not a rejection of reason, but it brings us to the edge of our reason to show that there's more to know, to experience, to discover. That part of this sacramental worldview we have in Christianity is that behind all these physical, tangible things, there's so much more going on. While yes, there is this physical, scientific layer, there's so much more behind it. A world charged with meaning. And that Jesus is the shepherd who sees humanity wallowing around in our despair, our sense of meaninglessness, our existential boredom, shows us that there is a way out. There's something so much more to discover. One of my favorite childhood stories growing up, or books, is the series The Chronicles of Narnia. Specifically a book called The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which is a story about these children discovering through a wardrobe, just meant to be a small portable closet, that they open this door expecting that's all that they'll find in there, only to realize that through the back of the wardrobe there's a whole nother magical world to explore, to discover. That's called Narnia. And part of what the writer C.S. Lewis is getting at is this Christian idea, this sacramental idea, that just when we think we've discovered it all, we've known it all, that Christianity blows open for us the back of the wardrobe to realize there's a whole world behind it all that charges the world with meaning. That our Christian spiritual life, our faith, rather than something to be bored about, is this invitation to a great and wondrous adventure. That Jesus, throughout the Gospels, keeps inviting us to this sense of a childlike wonder, this joy of discovery, to realize we've only just begun, and there's so much more. And in this adventure of discovery of who God is, of diving into relationship with Him, diving into the ocean with God, is in the process God revealing Himself to us. Along the way we discover who we are. That in pursuing this God who invites us to this great adventure, He reveals us to ourselves who we truly are, but also who we are truly called and created to be. It's easy for us, a great temptation for us as Christians, to merely look at the world and see the despair, see all the things going wrong, see all the troubles, and to get sucked into all of it. And certainly as Christians, we're not to deny the evils, the wrongs, the bad things going on in the world. Quite the opposite. We're to see it and name it for what it is. But also to realize that there's so much more behind all of it. Rather to spiral in despair, the answer, as it always has been and always will be, is to look back to God and to receive the great invitation He's trying to teach us something, but not just merely a list of instructions of rules to follow, but rather he's trying to show us the way into this great adventure of what it means to be truly human, truly alive. That he blows open the door only to realize that there's so much more. So let us say yes to this great invitation of the adventure. Amen.